Hello, welcome back to the podcast. This is Joseph,
This is Kevin.
This is your boy Truth.
and we're back here trying to talk about civil liberties. So on this podcast, we're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment of freedom of press, freedom of religion, and freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment. So for the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution are referred to together as the Bill of Rights. The states ratified in 1791 after the first Congress of the United States made the proposal. The people are guaranteed a number of essential freedoms and rights under the Bill of Rights, which also lays restriction on the federal government's authority. Collectively, these amendments protect individual liberty and enshrine crucial tenets of justice and due process in the legal system of the United States. They play a critical role in upholding civil liberties while establishing a framework that prevents political abuses of power and protects the rights and freedoms of all citizens. So for the First Amendment, it protects the freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. The Second Amendment recognizes the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The Third Amendment, it prohibits the government from quartering soldiers in private homes without the owner's consent during times of peace. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures and requires warrants to be issued only upon a probable cause. The Fifth Amendment guarantees civil rights in criminal proceedings, including protection against double jeopardy, self-incrimination, and deprivation of life, liberty, or property without the process of law. The Sixth Amendment ensures the right to be fair and a speedy trial by an impartial jury, the right to confront witnesses, and the right to legal representation. The Seventh Amendment provides the right to a jury trial in civil cases that exceed a certain value. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment and excessive bail or fines. Ninth Amendment states that the enumeration of certain rights in the Constitution does not deny or disparage other rights retained by the people. The 10th Amendment affirms the power not delegated to the federal government, nor prohibited to the states, are reserved to the states or the people.
That is crazy.
And then for the freedom of religion, it is an essential component of civil liberty since it protects people from discrimination and allows them to practice their beliefs, which it also promotes a pluralistic and diverse society. It encourages personal autonomy, conscious freedom, and the peaceful existence of various religious traditions. A court case for freedom of religion was Angel versus Vitale, and it was a case in the United States that dealt with the constitutionality of a state-sponsored prayer in public schools. In 1931, the New York State Board of Regents authorized a short voluntary prayer to be recited at the beginning of school each day. The prayer was non-denominational and read as follows: Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon Thee, and we beg Thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. The Supreme Court sided with the plaintiffs in a 6-1 ruling, including that state-sponsored prayers in public schools was unconstitutional and in violation of the Establishment Clause. The outcome of Angel versus Vitale had a major effect on the nation. It firmly established the idea that state-sponsored prayers in public schools was against the First Amendment Establishment Clause. The prayer in public schools was against the First Amendment. Holy shit. The ruling established a standard for instances involving religious activity in public schools in the future. And then for the second court case, Wisconsin versus Yoder, it dealt with the First Amendment's free exercise clause and the issue of religious freedom. The dispute started when an Amish village in Wisconsin refused to follow the state's legislation requiring students to attend school. They maintained that because high school exposed their kids to influences that went against their traditional values, it was incompatible with their religious convictions and way of life. The Supreme Court found unanimously in Yoder and Miller's favor, including that the statute requiring students to attend school was an infringement of their First Amendment rights to the free exercise of their religion. The Amish community's strong religious convictions and sincere desire to maintain their way of life were recognized by the court. It set a precedent that permitted religious organizations to request exemptions from generally applicable regulations if they could prove their sincerity and a significant hindrance to the exercise of religion.
All right, Kevin here. So I did the freedom of speech, which in the First Amendment states that anyone can do the right to speak, protest, and the press, the right to do some organization as clubs, so the government cannot forbid it from doing it. Under the First Amendment, Congress shall not make no law exempting religion, prohibiting free exercise, or allowing the freedom of speech or press. The most basic component of freedom is the expression and the right to freedom of speech. Freedom of speech may be exercised in direct word or a symbolic action. Freedom of speech is recognized as a human right under the Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The right of freedom of speech allows individuals to express themselves without the government interfering or shutting it down. In one court case in 1940, Cadwell versus Connecticut, a defendant were doing some public endearment during the protests in the constitutions allowing for World War II. But then the government kept shutting down, which made a whole case. The record of the verbal attack under the religious domination, which listeners were members provoking their indicts and they desired part and to strike the defendant, who picked up his books and went on his way. There was no showing that the defendant was noisy, overbearing, or offensive. It was claimed that he tried assaulting the government by playing record. It's shown that the sound of the for persons living near a crowd or implemented traffic, which defines the freedom of speech in the Constitution. The second one I did was freedom of press. Freedom of press, the First Amendment states that any news, media, and etc. can freely circulate any news they want to without any restrictions. The freedom provided the First Amendment of the United States Constitution to exercise their ideas, views, and facts politically without unrestricted. The numerous court cases and rulings on media examine that the Constitution provokes without a clear between two clauses. In the United States, the freedom of speech and the freedom of press are religiously of the press. Referring to the the freedom of press and religion. Freedom of press is used to cover communication throughout the whole nation. Electronic media, the internet, and new media and social media were developed in the 20th and early 21st century. A court case which was used by the freedom of press in 1945 was called the Associated Press versus the United States. The Supreme Court are held against Associated Press, which alleged violation of Sherman Act in 1990, who wrote majority opinion and the idea that should not be allowed to speak against the government. But since in the Constitution it says as the freedom of press, he wrote that it was not fair for him to not being shut down because of it. Instead, he decided the First Amendment from the Constitution on assumption and the widest discrimination of the information of essentials to the public. The freedom of press is a condition to a free society, which defended the Constitution, the freedom of press. 3 minutes.
The Second Amendment states that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of a people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This vague statement means that it has relied heavily on Supreme Court interpretation since its ratification in 1791. The Second Amendment is frequently interpreted as recognizing a person's freedom to own and carry firearms for sporting activities, self-defense, hunting, and other legal uses. According to this understanding, the government should defend the individual's basic right to keep and carry firearms. A frequent justification for the Second Amendment is its function as a barrier against tyranny from an oppressive government. An armed populace, according to its supporters, serves as a deterrent against repressive government policies by giving people the means to fight back. Protecting one's right to self-defense, personal security, and serving as a possible deterrent to tyranny are all part of its function in protecting civil freedoms. but maintaining the balance between gun rights and gun safety is still a challenging debate in modern culture. In the 2008 landmark case District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008, the Supreme Court interpreted that the Second Amendment protected the individual's right to bear arms. A handgun ban was in effect on the District of Columbia, making it illegal for anybody other than law enforcement to own a weapon. The District of Columbia's handgun restriction was challenged in court by Dick Heller, a licensed special police officer who claimed that it infringed on the Second Amendment rights. In a very contested 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court found in favor of Heller, ruling that the District of Columbia's handgun restriction violated the Second Amendment. Separate from participating in a militia, the court acknowledged that the Second Amendment preserves a person's right to keep and bear arms for individual self-defense. The Heller decision has a significant impact on the interpretation and application of the Second Amendment across the U.S.
Okay, guys, this wraps up the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the following topics about the Bill of Rights, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and the Second Amendment. Signing off here, Joseph, Truth, and Kevin. Peace.